The Linux Action Show is created by Jupiter Broadcasting. It's sponsored by Ting. Go to last.ting.com to save off your first device or plan, and DigitalOcean. Go over to digitalocean.com and use our promo code LASTDigital, and then you can spin up your own Linux rig for free. Welcome to the Linux Action Show, episode 388. My name is Chris.
And my name is Noah.
Hey, Noah, good morning to you. Good afternoon to you. Guess what, Noah?
It's a big show.
We got a big show. Also, holler out to our chat room over at jblive.tv who joined us this Friday at 3 p.m. Pacific. We're getting started right on the dime today because we got a big show coming up in this week's episode of the Linux Action Show. We're going to review Ubuntu 15.10, a couple different flavors of it, tell you what's new, if actually anything is new, where the changes are, and if it's worth an upgrade or maybe worth a switch. And a couple other neat things that have snuck in there you probably haven't heard about. Plus, in the news segment, we're going to talk about some big controversies around canonical Ubuntu and Kubuntu. We'll also tell you about a big event going on this weekend. You still might have a chance to live stream. And talk about the Alienware Steam machines going up for pre-order. And right here in my hot little hands, I have the new SteamOS controller. We'll be talking about this, how it performs, how it feels, how it works under Linux, and what you need to know if you're going to buy this $50 controller for your PC. It's rather interesting, and it has Linux first support. I'll tell you about my first impressions with the new Steam controller. But no, before all of that, you know what it is?
The picks.
It is the picks this week, and we're going to start with a runs Linux that's been coming in for a couple of months. People have been sending it in, not saying, hey guys, this runs Linux. They've been saying, hey guys, does this run Linux? Because if this does run Linux, you've got to feature it. Well, we've done some digging, some sleuthing, as it were, and we have determined that, yes, indeed, the Daiquiri helmet runs Linux. If you don't know what the Daiquiri helmet is, you're about to find out.
This is the first time that all these ideas and technology have come together in a product that can change the world. It combines an array of cameras, so the computer vision sees 360 degrees, an industrial-grade inertial measurement unit, so it's resilient even in low light, and a high-resolution depth sensor for precise tracking and alignment.
Well, what the Daiquiri Smart Helmet allows the worker to do is take work instructions and augment data or information right on top of the actual work environment.
One of the most powerful features is the ability to integrate live data from existing equipment and to visualize it in the context of the real world. Imagine being able to look at a gauge, see what the value is, even from across the room.
Now, so this is augmented reality, but not just like Microsoft's version with the HoloLens, but this is like a full-on worker's helmet with a full field of view, really impressive working demo, and the helmet itself runs Linux. Now, the stack that you can develop on top of is an SDK that works for multiple operating systems, or you can use the Unity game engine. But the hardware itself, the multiple computers in the helmet and managing all of that, are Linux-powered. And in fact, because it's Linux-powered, and I thought this was kind of an interesting angle on it, they have quite a bit of Linux job openings right now over on their website. And they're looking for people that have experience, Linux software engineer, packaging, a developer, embedded engineers, and all of that. They're looking for information. So this helmet, Noah, is super, super cool. It is kind of in the early prototype stages right now. They've solved some of the problems that the HoloLens hasn't been able to solve. And what I like about it is it seems pretty practical that something like this would work better in the more work environment where you might already have kind of an expensive helmet. Family member of mine was an iron worker, and the special kind of welding hood that he had a special kind of glass on it that was $1,000 just for the hood glass. So it's not unusual for specific work tasks to have really extremely expensive equipment like this. What do you think?
I think it would be a great replacement for my Google Glass.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly. It would actually be a functional replacement. It's pretty neat, and I like the fact that it has that sensor on there to do real-time tracking. They say it's the new standard for industrial wearables. The Daiquiri Smart Helmet, an elegant fusion of the most sophisticated display and sensor hardware with next-generation computer vision. What's also kind of neat about it, though, Noah, is it lies on top of a platform that is also sort of, you could build the AI and some of the software you use with your own set of cameras, your own set of hardware. You don't actually have to use their helmet. The software is open source. So their SDK you can build applications for, and you could actually build your own helmet with, they don't recommend you do this, but you could actually, duct tape Logitech C920 cameras to a helmet and put a couple of pies in there, and you could actually build your own system out of this.
See, that's the kind of stuff I like.
Heck yeah.
Because you're not a slave to a company.
No, you can. Yeah, no. It's now they have their own like kind of extra jazzed up stuff that sits on top of it for the daiquiri helmet, and the daiquiri helmet itself isn't open. But the fact that the platform it's built on top of, and you could actually build your own, is really cool. If you go to their website, you can find out more if you guys are curious. I was digging around. It's the AR toolkit that they've recently purchased, which is the world's most widely used augmented reality toolkit, which also has features available for Unity and things like that. And this stuff is available just for anybody to use right now. Pretty neat. Augmented reality is getting closer and closer. And they're also giving out awards for really cool augmented reality apps up to $4,000. And you know what I like about it, Noah?
The fact that it runs Linux?
Yeah, Linux first. The fact that it runs Linux and that it's open source underneath the hood and things like that. I think, because we've seen a lot from Microsoft in the augmented reality, but Noah, we haven't seen a lot that is in the open source space. So that is super neat. All right, let's tell you about something else that is super neat. That's our first sponsor, DigitalOcean. DigitalOcean is a simple cloud hosting provider dedicated to offering the most intuitive and easy way for you to get going with your own Linux rig up in the cloud. Last week, I don't know if I mentioned this, but I spun up I probably did. I spun up a DigitalOcean droplet to manage my password solution. LastPass being bought by LogMeIn was once again another reminder of why I should probably roll my own solutions for these important things. So I set up a droplet with GPG support and SyncThing and Pass and a few other things installed on it for me. In no time. And I absolutely am willing to pay $5 a month for what I can do with this thing because it's handling some other tasks for me too. It is great, and you can get started in less than 55 seconds. So your base rig, $5 a month. Think about that, $5 for the entire month. You'll get 512 megabytes of RAM, a 20 gigabyte SSD, one CPU, and a terabyte of transfer. This is your own Linux rig up in the cloud that you can install the X11 desktop and no Machine NX if you wanted to. I mean, there's really some pretty cool possibilities. Or you can use it as a headless server like I use. I have several of them like that. DigitalOcean has data center locations in New York, San Francisco, Singapore, Amsterdam, London, Germany, and Toronto. The interface is simple with an intuitive control panel, and power users can replicate it on a larger scale with their straightforward API. Now, no, I know you've got a lot of droplets. Have you actually ever tried to grab like a DigitalOcean droplet manager for your phone?
I did. I had one for a little bit, and what I found is that I just don't want to manage servers from my phone. If you are you are a great example of the opposite end of the spectrum, because you're the kind of person that's like, if you want to look up 5 reviews on 5 different products, you would have no problem doing that on your phone.
That's
would
true.
Maybe do one if I had to, but really, I'll just wait the extra couple hours till I get back to the house to do it. But when you're on your couch, like the laptop can be right next to you, and you'll still grab your smartphone to do it. So I think it's kind of a different way that we tackle stuff.
I'll tell you what I'll use it for. I just think, what is really handy is we have
restarting.
We have a droplet that runs Minecraft for my kids. And that's just a real quick quick fix. Like Dad doesn't even have to SSH in. It's just click. Okay, all right, there you go. See you later. Thanks for letting me know. And the other thing I like about it is it's the Swimmer app, and it's open source too. So it's an app for Android to manage DigitalOcean, and it's open source. I mean, it's pretty nice. It's pretty nice. But yeah, I follow you.
Yeah, I've used it to restart. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a big one. There's also the same thing for speaking of Ubuntu, there's an open source applet you can get for the Ubuntu Unity menu that kind of lets you do the same thing. You can also do snapshots is the other thing that's kind of nice from the menu, is be able to just trigger a snapshot because they're all just using the API. It's really easy when you use the API. So use our promo code LASTDigital to get a $10 credit. Then you can try out the $5 rig 2 months for free, or try out the fancier rig for free, no credit card required. LASTDigital. You apply that after you create your DigitalOcean account, and they'll give you a credit. It's a nice way to support the show, and also check it out. They've got some great things to play with up there, some really nice technology, some great data centers, and they've also introduced floating IPs, which is really great if you're moving things around. DigitalOcean.com, use the promo code LASTDigital. Thank you, DigitalOcean. Okay, no. So we have a app pick this week that I think is right up the automated alley. I can totally see why you picked this one. It's called, I believe, Blue Proximity, which probably gives it away what it is. But tell us what it is, Noah.
So I look at my desktop password kind of more like a little sticky note that I put on the computer that says, "This is mine, please don't use it." Because the reality is, if you have physical access to the machine, you're probably going to be able to at least log into the machine. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be able to access my data, right? Because obviously I have the ability to encrypt. But the actual password to the machine, I don't put a whole lot of stock into it. That said, it is really inconvenient. Every time I come down to my workshop and I go to do something and then I walk away, I don't necessarily want customer data displayed on the screen and stuff like that when I'm away from the machine. So what this program does, you install it, you pair it to your phone, and then when your phone is in Bluetooth proximity range, and you can set the threshold, when your phone is within a certain threshold range, it activates the screen unlock and unlocks the screen for you.
Or I assume the reverse if you walk away.
That's right. Yep. So when you leave the system, then, or when you leave your workspace or whatever, and it drops below that threshold, then it cuts off. So it's an incredibly cool way to kind of automate login, and it's almost sort of like two-factor in a way, in that it's something you have. It's not really two-factor because you don't also require something you know, but it seems like it walks that fine line between security and convenience, and I really like it.
Very cool. So Blue Proximity and blueproximity.sourceforge.net. We'll have a link to that in the show notes. And I like that kind of stuff. No, there's a few other apps out there to accomplish this, but looks like it's just a nice dedicated one, which is pretty cool. All right, so we have a pick that I'm not actually sure it would make for a great day-to-day runner, but we wanted to spotlight Hawaii OS, which is a cool, called a cool technical preview OS, and it looks really slick. It's a lightweight Linux-based operating system with a suite of software that makes your computer run. Now, here's what's really cool: is it uses its own shell as a workspace, and it's using Wayland underneath for the display manager, and it uses Qt as the toolkit for the display, and it uses systemd on the back end for all services. They say it offers a dynamic, flicker-free, fast environment with a responsive design. It behaves great on every form factor. Has a great out-of-the-box experience, they say. They have a consensus-based community interested in developing the Hawaii system. We believe in the power of open source, free software, and worldwide collaboration. So it looks really, I don't know what the 60% thing on the website means, but it looks really slick, Noah. And if you look at some of the features, they talk a little bit about their use of Wayland here. They also say they have a minimalist approach where there's almost no preferences available, and a highly customized approach where every single detail can be changed depending on what you go for. The shell is modular. This means we can create variants optimized for the device you're using. A shell optimized for the desktop will be the first choice available. As a technology, we are widely adopted applications, and third parties will have different UX appearances for both desktop and mobile. Wayland is the most exciting piece of technology for Linux graphics stack in years, and Maui is the first Linux distribution to use it. In fact, Maui couldn't be done without it. Wayland provides a method of compositing window managers to communicate directly with applications and video hardware. Its goal is a system where every frame is perfect, where applications are able to control the rendering enough that users won't see tearing lag, redraw, or flicker. So there you go, Noah. Sounds kind of fancy, huh? And they got, of course, screenshots up over at hawaiios.org.
It does. And you know what the first word that comes to mind as I see this? And we had a bit of an issue with the show doc this week, so I've only been looking at it. I haven't actually had a chance to install it and try it. But the first word that comes to my mind when I look at this stuff is polished. It just looks polished. It looks like an OS that I would expect from a company that designed a custom OS for a particular piece of hardware. And the fact that they have the option of I don't want customizability or I do want customizability, that is, in my opinion, like the perfect way to tackle that horse. Because
you have people that's what I'm curious about.
Well, and so here's the thing: you look at people like my mother, who she's 60 some years old, and she wants to open her web browser and do her stuff, and she wants everything else to get out of the way. And then there's people like me who that's great, and I want her to have that option, but I also want a button that I can click where I can get in and dig a little bit deeper. And the fact that they let you choose to go all the way or just leave it simplistic, I think that's a really great approach. I think more OSs should look at that kind of adoption.
Yeah. Yeah, I you know what? It makes me want to try it out. It makes me do. And if anybody out there has tried out linuxaction.reddit.com, we put it in the spotlight to kind of give it some attention to see if anybody wants to try it out. So there you go. Hawaii and hawaiios.org. And the Daiquiri Smart Helmet was that runs Linux. And then the desktop app pick was, what was it, Noah? Blue Proximity. Blue Proximity, right. So there you go. There's the 3 picks. Other picks at jupiterbroadcasting.com/lastpicks. All right, Noah, let's do the news.
That's the news, and this episode is brought to you by
Ting.com. Noah, everybody knows that. Go to last.ting.com and get ourselves a discount. Go ahead and get ourselves a little promo to last.ting.com. Everybody go there. It's mobile that makes sense. It's my mobile service provider, and it's Noah's mobile service provider. In fact, a lot of the crew here at Jupiter Broadcasting uses Ting because it really is mobile that makes sense. No contracts, no early termination fee, and you only pay for what you use. Isn't that slick? Now think about this. If you can go get an unlocked phone and you only pay for what you use, and if you're just a little savvy, if you're just a little clever, you can probably really optimize that. I have 3 lines. I'm paying around $40 this month. That is nothing. That is now, Noah can beat me on that. I think he's got like 8 lines and he pays a ridiculous low amount for that too. But you know, I'm still pretty proud of my 3.
Yeah, you should be. And here's the thing: I keep adding to them. They're like reproducing children.
Yeah.
I started out with a couple, but I keep finding good deals, and then I can never pass up a good deal. So I'll give you an example. This week, I found a unlocked T-Mobile hotspot on eBay for $18.
Nice.
Now, how are you going to pass that up, right?
Yeah.
I could always use an extra hotspot. So now my car has a dedicated hotspot inside the Jeep. There's a hotspot.
And
so
you're just
anytime I'm
paying
in my
for when you
Jeep,
use
I
it.
have internet.
Pay for when
That's
you use
right,
it.
yeah.
That's what's so nice about it. So you don't have to have the guilt of a contract that's charging you every single month, or you don't have to call up and pause billing or something like that, which some carriers will let you do for a maximum of 90 days. None of that with Ting. And I can tell you it is a really nice system because you can pick from 2 networks. So you get to pick and choose in what's better in your area, CDMA or GSM, and then you get to pull the trigger. They also have some great devices. Like look at this Alcatel One Touch Fling, $38. No contract, no early termination fee, pay for what you use. $38 for a basic feature phone that gets the job done. And of course, they got all the great phones like the Moto E, the Moto G, the Moto X, the Nexus, the internet phones, the Galaxy phones, the OnePlus. Lots of really good phones at Ting. When you buy them, you own them outright, like the Motorola Nexus 6, $349 unlocked. They also have the 6P and the Nexus 5X. Nexus 5X, $379. Pure Google phone. Updates directly from Google. You choose CDMA or GSM, pay for what you use. So slick. I would definitely check it out. Last.ting.com. And Noah, I know you're a big hiker. You're walking around all the time in Grand Forks. You're a big exerciser, Noah. I know this about you. I know this about you. And so
I'm learning some things about myself, apparently.
Yes, of course you are. And I'm worried about your safety in the rough streets of Grand Forks, North Dakota.
Uh-huh.
It is, you got lines that go one direction and lines that go another direction, Noah. And you just don't know what's going to happen. So Kyra's here with the Ting app pick, the Ting download to set you straight and keep you safe.
Mace, pepper spray, a taser, your smartphone. One of these things is not like the others. I'm Kyra, and this is the Ting download. Walking at night can be scary. Whether the danger is real or perceived, anything that can help us feel safer while walking alone can only be a good thing. We're not about to announce the first iPhone case that's also a taser. Someone's already come up with that. Seriously. Instead, we want to talk about Companion. This app lets you keep in touch with someone while you walk. It doesn't require you to stay on the phone with that person or send text messages back and forth. Rather, it lets you send updates and share your location along the way. That's neat, but nothing you couldn't accomplish with a similar app. What sets Companion apart is that it proactively monitors your progress as you go and has the smarts to figure out if something is amiss. It can tell if you quickly change directions, if you've fallen over, or if you start running, for example. If your headphones cord gets yanked out, it treats that like a trigger too, and will alert the people you've specified, or even the authorities, instantly sharing your GPS location. You have 15 seconds to dismiss a triggered event before the app takes matters into its own hands. Companion is apparently gaining traction on college campuses, and we can understand why. Grab Companion for free from Google Play or the Apple App Store, and you'll never need to walk home alone again. If you like this app, like this video and subscribe to our channel on YouTube to keep up with what we're doing.
Last.ting.com. I could also see that being a pretty useful thing for parents. Maybe the kid's walking to the bus stop, that kind of thing. Because every now and then, it's like a big deal for Dylan. Like, let me walk to the bus by myself. Let me walk to the bus by myself. All right, here, just take this, and it's going to track you, and then it'll be fine. And, of course, when you're only paying for what you use, it's not a crazy idea to give your kid a phone, even a young one. Last.ting.com. Check them out. And a big thank you to Ting for sponsoring the Linux Action Show. Okay, Noah, we've got a lot to cover this week, but one thing I want to cover right now is an event that's happening that regrettably we couldn't make it to, but still deserves some attention. That's Siegel going on in Seattle right now, October 23rd and 24th. And tomorrow they may have some live streaming talks. So I want to point everybody over at their schedule. You can find that at Siegel.org, SEAGL.org. Also, follow them on Twitter because they're tweeting about some of this stuff as well. So you can check that out. They have some tweets going up. It's at SEAGL on Twitter, and maybe we can make it next year. No, hopefully it'll make it on our list. We do have some.
that'd be really cool.
We do have some upcoming travels we'll be telling people about here in just a little bit. But first, this is an Ubuntu edition of the Linux Action Show, so it does seem fitting that maybe we start with some very big news in the Ubuntu community. This is the big story today as we're recording the Linux Action Show. Kubuntu's release manager has called it quits. So Jonathan Riddle lost his leadership roles relating to Ubuntu. You might remember that he stepped down a bit ago. It's been kind of vague what's going on with him and Kubuntu since then. But there has been a little bit of an update. Now that Kubuntu 15.10 shipped yesterday, he's moving on and no longer will be serving as the Kubuntu release manager. Instead, he's going to get involved with upstream KDE development, which seems like a good, positive development. But he wrote an announcement on Kubuntu.org. It says, for the last 3 years, Ubuntu's main sponsor, Canonical, has had a policy contrary to this, and after much effort to try to rectify this, and it's clear this isn't going to happen. The Ubuntu leadership seems compliant with this, so I find myself unable to continue helping the project that won't obey its own community rules, and I need to move on. Now, that's kind of an interesting, but not too out of what we've heard from him for a while now. So not too surprising to hear him make that point. But he also went on to say on the Ubuntu Dev mailing list that he said he's heard from too many people who feel they've been bullied out of the project for this just to be a personal problem. This community needs a council who will stand up for the third party and volunteer developers who will criticize when money is collected and additional use for the community but not used for who, and will ensure the Ubuntu policies on copyright licenses. Now, he goes on to say on Reddit in another thread that Canonical defrauded donors and broke copyright licenses. His claim being that on that slider page, that some of the money that people slid over to community was not tracked properly, and it's not clear where it was actually spent. Now, since then, Canonical has been actually posting where that money gets spent and auditing it. But there was a chunk of money that was sort of not sure where it went. And the accusation, as you will, is a pretty big one. That the community donated money to Canonical for development of Ubuntu, and the money that was slid to the community side is really not tracked where it went. And again, with more claims of leadership not listening, things like this, it's sort of once again yet another shot at Canonical, and they're sort of once again put in the position of having to defend themselves. They have to come from a point of defending accusations that were lobbied at them. Like, it doesn't seem almost fair to me. Like, it seems like we're hearing from one side and not the other side in this story. Noah, what is your thoughts? What are your takes?
Well, so I have no doubt that any company of size is going to make mistakes. The question becomes, is it an integrity issue, or is it an accident? And in most open source companies, I think we owe it to them to give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's assume for the time being that it was an accident. Maybe community funds that were donated with the hope that they would go towards a specific cause, or really mandated that they would go towards a specific sect. That didn't happen. But is that because Canonical just is a big organization? They have a lot of moving parts and accidents happen? Or did they intentionally just say, we don't really care what the community members thought they were donating to, we need money over here, and so we're going to take it? I think there's a big difference there, and I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, I agree. I think my experience has showed me that sometimes from the outside, even when you're fairly close to the inside, but you're still on the outside, things can look a lot different than they actually are. And you can have all of the evidence in the world that seems to support what you're saying. And a lot of times, as computer geeks, also pretty damn confident in our opinion and our ability to suss up a situation. And so we come to a conclusion about how somebody is screwing us, or how somebody is wrong, or how somebody's a jerk. And then everything we see after that just sort of confirms that viewpoint. Yep. It's a human problem, really. And I think
we need something to complain about, is what it amounts to.
I think there's a culture in the intelligent people. I think there's a culture of overconfidence in their ability to suss out and figure out what's going on. And Jonathan could be completely dead on. He also could be partially right, and the full story could be much, much different. But the challenge is essentially Canonical has to come out and say they have to defend themselves from an awful position. they're starting, somebody's going out and claiming something, and they're having to come back and start from a position of defending themselves, which never sounds good, because then whatever you say always sounds like you're just being defensive.
Did you beat your wife in the morning or in the afternoon?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Kind of a thing.
That's kind of where I was going. Yeah. So while we're talking about Canonical, I want to talk about some interesting developments on Ubuntu Touch. And I'm wondering, Noah, for you specifically, if this could make Ubuntu Touch a much more likely mobile platform for you. This is being shown off this week by Michael Hall. We'll tell you more about that in a second, but he was posting some pretty neat teases. This week, he showed proof of full desktop apps running on Ubuntu Touch on a Nexus 4, including GIMP and Firefox. He posted on his Google Plus page here a picture of him running GIMP on the Nexus 4. And you can see it's running like in a Xmirror window here. And that's the full GIMP program running on a Nexus 4. He goes on, he emphasized that the images remain very much under development. Lots of work still to do to make these useful, but it's great to be able to show visible progress. After Hall posted the screenshot, Softpedia confirmed with him, and Canonical's plan is indeed to make it possible to run any native Linux application on Ubuntu Touch. Now, here's the neat thing. Because at first you're like, why would I ever want GIMP on a mobile phone? Why would I ever want that, right? Here's the neat thing. Now, imagine the screen is a little bit bigger, or you have it hooked up to an HDMI monitor. Or maybe it's like a 7-inch or 12-inch tablet.
Or maybe I just want to do it because I just want to do it.
Because you just need to, you're on the road. But when you hook up, say, like a Bluetooth mouse, the idea is that Unity will flip into desktop mode. So or interface, like it'll make it more approachable in a desktop mode. So you could take a phone or take a tablet and have like these core applications that you have to get your job done, and you wouldn't normally want to run them. I mean, maybe I'm just making all this up, but it seems like this could be really nice. Like if there's every now and then there was just one thing you had to edit under GIMP, and so it would just be nice to run it for 5 minutes every now and then. And you know why I know this is possible? Because I'm the guy who's been like, geez, I just need to remote into the system right now. I don't care if I have to pinch and zoom this team viewer screen all over the place. I'm going to get into this computer and fix this problem from my phone. I've been there. I've done that. So that's why I look at this and I think that would totally work. What do you think, Noah? Am I too optimistic?
No. So I have a couple of big hurdles to get over with Ubuntu's mobile operating system. And the first is that at this point in time, in a lot of ways, Android is a more usable system than Linux is in certain respects, right? There are certain applications that exist for Android that have existed on the Windows and Mac desktops for a long time, and they're available on Android, but still not available on the Linux desktop. And so in that respect, there is a lot of advantage in having an Android-based device. The second thing that comes to me is I have got, people always say, well, you evaluate it with preconceived notions, and that's why you don't like this. In the case of Ubuntu Touch, every time I pick up an Ubuntu Touch device, I want to like it. I want to say, this is going to be my next phone. Take my Android phone and please give me one of those. And every time I pick one up and I play with it, I am left with this feeling of I feel like I'm using Android, except it's a lot older and doesn't support as many native apps. And those are two really big hurdles to get over. Now, I will mitigate those, or I can mitigate those with two other sides of it. And that is, the first is, I actually trust the platform. If Ubuntu comes out on the phone, I have inherent trust for the platform and it can store my data. I would be perfectly comfortable encrypting my data and putting it on a Nexus 4 if it was running the Ubuntu operating system. And the second thing is, if I can truly run desktop applications on my phone, then how much different is that from if I could install Ubuntu as it is right now on a tablet and use it with a keyboard and mouse? And you know what? I would do that. If it was easy and simple and straightforward, and I didn't think I would spend a bunch of money on hardware and then hours of my time to make that work, I would probably do just that, because really, there are a lot of things I like about the tablet form factor. Makes it easier for transportation and carrying it around. And as you know, I like to haul my laptop with me everywhere I go. So if I can get that down to a 7 or 10 inch thing, I would be all for that.
There's two ways I look at this. I ask myself, would I be interested if Google announced tomorrow that Chrome OS would be able to run native Linux applications like GIMP? And my answer to that is yes, I would be interested in that product. So there I can see there's a reason for it right there. There's people that want that type of portability, that type of device. Yeah, and mind you, this is on an ARM chip too, right? Because this is a Nexus 4, so that kind of battery life too. But they don't want to use Chrome OS. So that's number one. But number two, and I really agree with what the chat room is saying right now, is there are just certain Linux applications that I love, specifically terminal apps, that like HTOP and WeChat and CMOS that are never going to, or Vim is another great example, that are never going to get ported to an Ubuntu Touch Qt QML app. Never going to happen.
Yeah.
Not in 30 years. They'll never get moved over. And every now and then I want one of those. And I realized the terminal was going to be available already, but this is sort of an extension of that, moves it even further. But honestly, it means it could be a serious contender as a Linux desktop in your pocket. Like that actually makes it, that way I'm not just limited to Qt apps and things like that. Xmirror, it must be how they're doing it.
The thing I need to bring this all together is I need a little dock on my desk that I can set my phone into and then have it connected to a keyboard, a mouse, a monitor, a wired network jack, the whole 9 yards. And if that happens, I would buy it even if I never used the built-in screen, just the ability to carry the computer with me and dock it from place to place. Even if all it ever did was go from the dock from home to the dock to my work to maybe a little mini dock in my car. If that's all I could do with it, I would use it. I would switch tomorrow.
I'm starting to think it's going to happen. No, I'm starting to think it's going to happen. I'm excited. So something else I'm kind of excited about. I want to just shift gears for just a couple of minutes. We'll do a quick Valve update, because we got a couple of things happening this week. Number one is the Alienware Steam machines have gone up for pre-sale. They come in at a couple different price points. These are the consoles that come with a Steam controller, SteamOS preloaded. I got a couple of choices for you here, Noah. You ready for these prices?
I'm ready.
$650 and $750. You get a 4th Gen i5. You get SteamOS, 8 gigabytes of memory across the board. On the nicer one, they upgrade you to a pretty nice NVIDIA GPU. But yeah, so that's way cheaper than a PS4 or an Xbox. And these are 1st Gen devices too, so they're probably not going to be flawless.
And the other thing is, it has legacy purpose as well. So with the PS4, when we move on to the PS5, where that PS4 is now it is now best suited to adjusting the height of my monitor. And that's it.
Yeah.
With these boxes, when they become outdated, I can use them for other things. I can use them as media centers. I can use them as servers. I can use them as desktop computers if I wanted to. I can give it to my kid. I can do other things with this particular piece of hardware.
So that's a great point. And the Steam library has a much wider range. There's a lot of lower end games and higher end games. That's a great point. Okay, so here's the catch though, Noah. That price though is still, I mean, that's a hard sell. I mean, come on. I can't believe you're justifying that price still. $650.
Really?
I think it's got to be around $400.
But what do you get? So if you go with the $400 price point, I agree compared to other console games, or the game console itself, I guess I can understand where you're coming from. But I think if you look at what you're actually getting for that $650, I don't know if I could. Well, I guess I could, but if once you take into to account labor, I don't know if I could build a $650 computer.
Well, and the form factor is nice. I'll give you that. It is a good rig, and so it comes with a Steam controller. So I want to take a minute and I want to talk about the Steam controller. So the Steam controller it's $50. I want to start right there. It's $49.99. It's $49.99, and it is crazy configurable. And if you have a current version of Linux, depends on your Linux, but it's going to require probably a couple of things to get it working. Unless you're lucky enough to have kernel, 4.3 or 4.2 that has built-in support. So it's got a Steam button right there in the middle of the controller. And my impressions of the controller itself, like weight-wise, is it feels a little bit heavier or so than the Xbox 360 controller. It's got a really good feel to it, Noah. It feels like a very well-built piece of kit. Much better than the sample units I picked up at like PAX or something a year ago. So I'd say for $49, it feels like one of the best built controllers ever. Here, I'll log in and I'll show you. I'm going to start up Steam for you, Noah. I know you're a big Steam player, Noah. I know you're big on that.
Well, I'm even less so with a controller. But tell me this: Have you played with the Xbox 360 controller?
Oh yeah, that's the other controller I have. Yeah.
So that is kind of hailed as the controller. I'm interested. What do you think about that Steam controller as it compares to the Xbox 360 controller?
If you're going to buy a controller today, I think this is the one to get. I mean, I think the Xbox 360 controller is the one to get. I don't actually think this would be I don't think this is a controller I would actually recommend to people at this point.
Okay.
But because so many things just work out of the box with the Steam controller. So right now I am using Steam Big Picture mode, and I'm using my Steam controller to manipulate the game. Now there's a couple of games in here right out of the box that have Steam controller support, and they make it really obvious, like BioShock and things like that. And then there are certain games that don't have Steam support, and that's a bit of a bummer, because to get those to work, you kind of have to do a little bit of juggling. So I'll just show you real quick. So this one is Distance. It's a game we've been playing on the Faux Show. We're going to be playing it next week on the Faux Show. And in order to play this with the controller, I get a nice message that says controller configuration required. This game wasn't designed for controllers, but you can play it with your Steam controller. Here's how you do it, though. You have to go manage the game, configure the controller, right? Now you can go in here and map every single thing on the pad and the buttons yourself, which I'm never going to do because I'm too lazy. Or you can hit X and it brings up community prepared configurations for the controller. And this is where I think Valve's really got some secret sauce. You go in here, you can get the recommended gamepad layout, you can get community created gamepad layouts, you can select them, and it's good to go. It pre-configures all of the buttons for that game for you, and now it's loaded so I can save it. I can save it as my own profile so I can give it my own one if I want to have some variations on it, or I can just now select this one and be good to go. And now the game essentially has controller support because it's mapped keyboard and mouse controls to the controller. Now, how does the mouse work? This touchpad in the middle is an extremely sensitive touchpad, and it includes haptic feedback too, so you get a little sense of your distance and your travel on it. The whole thing can vibrate as well and has a pretty good feeling vibrator in it. Heyo. And all in all, I would say it is a very, very good first generation product. I don't know if I would actually recommend you go out and buy it right now. I'd probably wait a couple of months and maybe even wait till January-ish. I'm not quite sure because enough of the experience was a little ho-hum that I found myself actually spending more time trying to get the controller to work with different stuff than I actually did play games. Which is just, I think, a symptom of an early device, because the device itself, Noah, is really good, and the games that support it, it works crazy good out of the box.
How smooth is I assume it is emulating a joystick, right?
Or a mouse, yeah. And it is just as smooth as your nicest gaming mouse. And, you have micro movements with your thumb on this thing, so you can really just kind of, you can control the sensitivity, but with just very little effort, you can move around. Like I played Borderlands, the pre-sequel, and found looking around to be extremely fluid. And then it has two triggers on the top and bottom, so I can assign those to little things. And it has paddles, which is nice for racing games, so you can shift or something with the paddles on the bottom of the controller. And it has one analog stick on the top of it, as well as the touchpad controls.
Now, how about going from essentially a mouse to essentially a trackpad? I mean, that's kind of what you're doing, right?
Yeah, it's such a hypersensitive trackpad that it doesn't really feel like a downgrade at all, because now I feel like with micro movements of my thumb, I can accomplish what I would have to do entire movements on my hand with. I did have to spend about 20, 30 seconds being like, oh, geez, is this too sensitive? Is this too much? So I guess here's my walkaway, quick Linux Action Show review of the Steam controller. I think it's one of the best controllers on the market. I think it's one of the most customizable controllers on the market, and it has first-class support under Linux. However, if I was going to buy a controller today to play games today, I would probably pick up a 360 controller because there's really no downside. It's going to work with all the games that have console or have controller support, and it's going to work with the Steam Link. It's going to work with SteamOS and other Linux games just fine. This is a longer play because not only is our games going to be written to support this controller, and I think they will since it's a solid piece of hardware, but I think because this thing can be reprogrammed to be any controller or anything, this is the better long-term bet. And also the $50 price is extremely competitive for a really well-built wireless controller.
Yeah, because the Xbox one is what, $35, $36?
Something around there, and that's after years and years of iterating on and bringing the price down. So
right, and they're wired.
Really good stuff from Valve. I was really impressed with it. And
how does it connect? Is it RF or Bluetooth?
It is like its own. It has its own dongle. I assume it's RF.
Okay.
Or
RF,
some 2.4 gigahertz something. So a couple of things. You do need a couple of UDEV rules on current versions of Linux on Ubuntu 15.10, which we're talking about today. When you install the Steam package from the repo, it also creates those UDEV rules for you. And in the Arch user repository, there are some Steam UDEV rules. You just install that package and it creates all the rules, and then you just plug the device in and it's good to go. And I think probably by the time the next versions of all the distros get updates, this is going to be working out of the box for everybody. Pretty cool, Noah. So I would say, long-term bet, this is the controller to go for. If you want to buy something today, you're still not making a mistake going with the 360 controller. It's still a fine controller for Linux. If you can stomach giving your money to Microsoft, that would be the only thing I would mention. And we'll have links for people that want to get it set up on their distro in the show notes. And by the way, Portal 2, crazy good. All right, Noah, that's all the news for this week. It is time for the Linux Action Show to take a look at Ubuntu 15.10, which came out this week. And in fact, Noah and I have been kicking around for a little while in its different iterations as it's getting closer and closer. And we're going to tell you what's new, what's changed, and what we think of this new release. But first, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor, System76.com. Go to System76 and get a machine ready to run Ubuntu 15.10 today. Ready to go out of the box. They got powerful rigs designed, built to run Linux desktops, laptops, servers, you name it. In fact, I'm a little bit curious about this new Wild Dog Pro because it's got the new 6th gen Intel i5 or i7 processor, and it can go up to a GTX 980 and 64 gigabytes of RAM. What I love about it is you can get it in silver or black, and then you go in there and customize it the way you need it, and then over time you could also upgrade it because it's really straightforward to just pop a new GPU in there. Really cool, the Wild Dog Pro now with those brand new Intel processors, System76.com. Go look at them. Go check out. These are systems that are ready and just rock with Linux out of the box. And if you're doing like complete reinstalls or doing upgrades, you're going to have great results with System76. System76.com. In fact, we're going to be visiting System76 for their Superfan contest in November. Coming up in November, Noah and I will be doing a live episode of the Linux Action Show from System76's office. Are you excited? No, are you ready?
I cannot put into words how excited I am. In fact, I believe she's the sales and marketing manager, but Luisa and I have been going back and forth with emails, kind of getting some of the travel details and whatnot nailed down. And it is. It's an exciting thing. I wonder if they would let us use a couple of those machines to do the live show.
Oh, we should ask.
How cool would that be? How cool would that be? What's that big workstation that they have? That's like insanely expensive, and neither you or I could ever afford it. Well, we could, but we'd have to sell our children.
Yeah, we could do that. You're talking about they got the Silverback workstation or even the Leopard Extreme.
No, Silverback. I want to do the Silverback.
I'd say the Leopard Extreme. I would sell 2 kids. I don't even need to. I'd do all 3 kids for the Silverback. We both have to sell our kids, and then we could go into it halvesies. Actually, I think we could just sell 1, but maybe they'd take all 3 of mine, just for a little bit. I mean, maybe they give them back. They could do like a trade program.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. You take my kids, they'll come back and say, here, you can have both the Silverback and your kids, just please take them.
Like, how about like in January? Like, keep them through Christmas, give me the Silverback workstation, and then we'll do a swapsies in January.
Yep.
Yeah.
After the tax.
You don't have to be as extreme. Just go to System76.com and get yourself a rig born to run Linux. Thanks, System76. Okay, Noah, so it's an Ubuntu review here on the Big Show, and these are always a bit of a challenge. They're actually a little more challenging than your other distros because you got all the prominent flavors that are based on Ubuntu, plus there's sometimes major changes and sometimes minor changes. Traditionally, the .10 releases have been an area where there has been a lot of experimentation. That's essentially where Unity was first introduced. The Amazon search results came into one of these because a lot of times this was the breeding ground for really new stuff before the LTS had to have everything really nailed down. That is not necessarily the case with straight up generic Ubuntu 15.10. There is some new stuff. There is some new technology in here that is worth talking about. So first of all, it ships with Linux kernel 4.2. One of the nice new things that server people have been looking for is stateless persistent network interfaces. Not a huge fan, but some people love that. A lot of the GNOME packages have been brought up to GNOME 3.16. Not all. I think like the gedit version on here is still from like I think gedit is still from like GNOME 6 or GNOME 3.10. Yeah, I'm opening gedit right now to double check. But yeah, it is a super old version of gedit, and that's fine. It's a little weird. There's different parts of gedit. Yeah, 3.10. There's some parts. There's some things that have changed. But one of the other things that's changed when it comes to GTK apps is the upstream GNOME scroll bars are now being used on the borderless like hidden scroll bars. That's kind of nice. GCC 5 is in here as well as Python 3. And like I mentioned earlier, the support for the Steam controller when you install the Steam package from the repo. So that's kind of some of the new stuff under the hood. There's also a new version of Unity, version 7.3.3. And kind of one of the big features, I'm not kidding, one of the big new features of Unity, and no, I don't know if you noticed this one. Huge. You ready for this? You can now drag you can drag icons from the menu launcher. You can drag them and put them on the desktop now. I don't know exactly why you'd want that, but it is now a thing that's somehow possible to do. I have not actually done it. I don't know why you'd want that. Desktop icons need to die, but that is kind of nice. And also, there's other nice things like you can from the dash to the desktop. You can page up and down, and navigation works to scroll through the dash now. Session exit buttons have a click effect. There's full screen menu bar fixes and a bunch of other little improvements and things like that. So it's not a huge update, Noah, but it doesn't necessarily need to be. And I'm kind of curious, did you walk away impressed? Did you like it? What are your thoughts, sir?
So I use Ubuntu because I know that there's a lot of other people that we support that are going to end up using Ubuntu, and so I want to stay current with it. It would probably not be my first choice of distro. That said, I enjoy steady and true. So my ideal update to Ubuntu is slightly newer versions of programs, but they're all very well tested and tested with each other, so I know nothing's going to break. Slightly newer kernel version, and just don't change drastically anything so that I can still find things and I can still get work done. And I thought Ubuntu 15.10 hit that nail square on the head. You didn't talk about the scroll bars, but apparently they did a lot of work on scroll bars.
No, I gave him a quick mention. No, what it is there's a few bugs with the scroll bars, and sort of what turned out to be, I think, the easiest fix, but also kind of nice, is they just grabbed the scroll bars from upstream from GNOME now. So they used to have their own like scroll bars that would automatically hide and go away and things like that. And I'm kind of demonstrating it right now on the live stream.
Where you can just grab a little ways off.
Yeah. And now, so instead of their own implementation that was a little funky, some people thought, they're using the upstream version, which is honestly nice because it solves a few other bugs that their implementation was causing.
Yeah, and it does. It makes a big difference, and I really like it. So upon first boot up, first thing I noticed is that annoying system problem is detected thing is gone. Finally.
I got one. I've gotten one in my testing.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay,
just one.
I had it on two machines. I had it on a spare laptop for the first day or so, and then after I made sure everything works, I actually put it on my main machine, and I've been running it almost 24 hours now on there, and it's been almost flawless. I had one little problem when I got in to get on the air to do the show today, but save that. Everything else has worked really well. Yeah. The new wallpaper, I think, is really popping. They do a really good job of keeping that same purple-esque theme and at the same time making it just new enough that I can tell what version I'm on right away, which I like. One thing I was super disappointed. I was under the impression that the online search results were going to be defaulted to off past 14.04, and that's not the case.
Yeah, for some reason I got that impression too, and I don't know where I got that along the way, but I also had that impression.
So that's not cool. The other thing I found, and I don't know if this is, I've been using Arch for the past couple months, so I don't know if this is maybe specific to 15.10 or maybe this has been happening for a while. When I choose Allow and Remember inside of Flash, every time I open Firefox back up, it asks me again if I would like to enable the Flash plugin. And I have to click Allow and Remember again. And then it's like playing ping pong. And I don't understand why that isn't persistent. The things that really drew me to Ubuntu, and it is really, really helpful with these reviews when we go from one desktop to another, because things stand out to me a lot better than they would otherwise.
Yeah.
If you're using a low resolution display, you should definitely be on Unity. Whether you're using Unity on Arch or Unity on Ubuntu, you should be on Unity, because the ability to scale the other way. We do pixel scaling to bring really high resolution displays back to normal size, so we have normal size buttons and normal size text. There isn't a lot of emphasis on any other desktop that I'm aware of making things that are really big, smaller, and giving you a little bit more screen real estate than Ubuntu does. And so with that pixel scaling, you can actually scale down and and I can take a 1366 by 768 display and get almost the same screen real estate as a 1080 by 1280 by 1920 by 1080. It's not exactly the same because obviously, that's just scaling the operating system. It's not necessarily going to scale things like inside of Lightworks. Those windows and stuff aren't going to scale. But it definitely goes a long, long way to making those low resolution displays.
Like your netbook res, your 1336s, right?
Right. And let's face it, if you go into Walmart or Best Buy and walk out with a laptop, chances are, for better or for worse, whether we like it or not, it's going to be 1366 by 768 almost always, unless you're spending over $1,000. The other thing I noticed, and again, not sure if this is an Ubuntu thing or if this is a Thunderbird thing, and I've just now noticed it because I have that particular version of Thunderbird, I can't seem to save messages into my sent folder. So on Google, it works on Fastmail, but in my Google folder, when I sync IMAP to Google, if I send a message, it just hangs. And eventually when I click cancel, it'll say the message sent, but I wasn't able to save a copy to the sent folder. Not sure exactly why that's happening, but it's kind of irritating. The other thing is I noticed I have all my files on an encrypted drive. And the first thing I noticed is there's no way to, even though crypt setup is installed, there's some sort of problem that actually prevents me from using it. And so you have to reinstall crypt setup in order to get it to work. And I think Wimpy actually explained why that is, but they haven't fixed that particular problem yet. And then additionally to that, if you don't mount it the first time when it pops up for the password, if you don't type in that password and you click OK and you get a wrong password, then click cancel, you can't go back in and remount it. I have to log out and then log back in to get it to mount that encrypted drive. I will be the first person to acknowledge that there are some really funky things with this particular install of Ubuntu that make me question if maybe this is just a fluke. But most of these problems have persisted across 2 different installs with 2 different ISOs downloaded 2 separate times and burned onto 2 separate USB sticks. So that does lend some credence to the fact that it could be a 15.10 thing.
Yeah. I was saying on the pre-show, this is the first time I mean, it's not totally uncommon, but the first time I've ever had a bad ISO. And I didn't really realize it until I gotten fairly far into trying to get it to boot, because it did just fine. And then it was the first time I've ever had to unplug from one USB port I was using and plug into a different USB port in order to get the entire live session to start. Otherwise, I just got a failure to find the file system error. Now, if you are coming from an older version of Ubuntu, like say 15.04 or newer, there are some big changes underneath the hood for you. This has the new AMD GPU kernel driver, which means you can get new recent Radeon GPUs. It's got the Intel Broxton support. It has a flash-friendly file system, which is really cool, with encryption support. It also has support for Extended 4 encryption now with this version. Managing clustered RAIDs is experimental. Live patching kernel code is in this version of Ubuntu. DMCrypt, CPU scalability improvements as well. So there has been some changes to DMCrypt, Noah. All of this is also under the hood if you're coming from 15.04 or newer. So before we get into the other flavors, because I think that's maybe where some of the action's at for this release, I want to just say right off the top, while we're just talking about generic 15.10, I think both of us give it a solid no reason not to upgrade.
Yep.
Like if you're on the non-LTS releases, you get 9 months of support. And so you're going to have a 2-month window to move from 15.04 to this. And so it's something that, whenever you're on a non-LTS release, there's very little reason. And sometimes we have come out of the reviews and said, wait a couple of weeks, wait a couple of months. This time, I think it's pretty much good to go. You agree?
Yeah, and I went from an LTS to 15.10. Yeah, and I'd be lying. I wouldn't have done that had it not been for the review for the show, because usually I will the whole idea of LTS to me is I don't have to worry about it for 4 years. Yeah. I can hang on to it for 4 years, and then I take 1 year and have a little bit of headache, and then I'm good for another 4 years. So I wouldn't intentionally break that cycle in the middle of it, but I agree with you 100%. Nothing really has gone wrong, save one major problem with my Wi-Fi, and I don't even know that that's Ubuntu's problem. I kind of suspect it's a problem with my computer.
Yeah, there's always those kinds of things. I was like, because I was installing on Bonobo, I was like, what is going on? And I did a Google search on the error message I was getting when it was booting up. Was like, and the one guy on Ask Ubuntu was like, yeah, I just used a different USB port and that fixed it. And I'm like, no way, it's that simple. And that fixed it. So let's talk about where some of the action is. So Ubuntu 15.10 also makes for a great base for some derivatives from some different flavors, if you will. Kubuntu 15.10 is shipping with Plasma 5.4, and a lot of the buzz around this is a very solid implementation of the KDE Plasma desktop. And I have been getting comments from guys that say something along the lines of, I've been a Kubuntu user for years, and this is one of the best releases I've ever seen. So Kubuntu 15.10 is getting a lot of positive buzz. GNOME 15.10 is also out of the Ubuntu flavor. This includes GNOME 3.16, which, in my opinion, is a bit of a bummer since GNOME 3.18 is out and running on 2 machines we have right here in the room with me. So GNOME 3.16 is a bit of a bummer, but GNOME 3.16 is still a pretty good release, and now you can get an Ubuntu flavor of it. That's nice. And it's also been updated to Blue Z5, which is nice for you Bluetooth users. Ubuntu 15.10 is out with a good-looking LXDE desktop, as well as Ubuntu Kylin, and Xubuntu 15.10 with new apps like the XFC panel switch, a small tool that lets you save, restore, and switch between various different panel layouts. There's also a new version of Core's Ubuntu apps, including Catfish, Mugshot, and the Gmusic browser. And then, last but not least, our friends over at the Ubuntu Mate project, 15.10 ships with Ubuntu Mate Desktop 1.10, with plenty of nice improvements, a good welcome screen. New apps and utilities include a welcome screen tool offering tips and suggestions, tools for switching between GPUs on NVIDIA Prime hardware. And the Ubuntu Mate project also is rolling out Ubuntu Mate for the Raspberry Pi 2, which looks really cool. We're hopefully going to pick Wimpy's brain about this on Linux Unplugged this coming week, but this looks really cool, Noah. It's the full Mate desktop right there on a Raspberry Pi. Now, that's awesome.
You can. Yeah, I'll leave everyone's imagination to what I think about Ubuntu Mate.
Yeah, I know you loves it. You loves it. So there's a lot of action in the different flavors that all like Kubuntu coming with Plasma 5.4. It's a huge upgrade for Kubuntu. Ubuntu Mate Edition is getting some really nice features. I think there's a lot of innovation in the desktop there with that distribution. If you love the glory days of the desktop, these desktops are very much still following that paradigm. And here's why I bring that up right now, is because this 15.10 release, to me, feels a lot like getting everything kind of circled in, getting everything kind of stabilized, slowing things down, because pretty soon it's Unity 8 time. And in fact, right now in this version of Ubuntu 15.10, you can actually start playing with the Unity 8 desktop in a Linux container. And I have linked in the show notes a way to do this, to get Unity 8 on your Ubuntu installation, and then it just becomes an option at your LightDM login screen. And it logs in, and it uses Mir. It contains all of it in a container so it doesn't mess up the rest of your system. And you can start playing with Unity 8 right now. It's not production ready, but you can start to do it. This is getting really close. We're actually getting there. And so this very nice desktop that has very little changes is going to look like a bygone era soon. You know what I mean, Noah? Like, this is going to be... The LTSs are going to be around, but there's these releases. When we start going to Unity 8, it's going to be a whole new game. It's going to be a whole new desktop, whole bunch of growing pains, I estimate. What do you think?
I can't say I'm excited for that, to be honest with you. I mean, here's the thing. I'll come clean. If we get to a point where Ubuntu strays from its solid and stable, and I can just kind of fall back to it, and I can just set it up once and forget about it. If we change from that, if we go away from that, I can't use Ubuntu anymore, because that really, aside from the fact that it is, I feel like it's a polished desktop right out of the gate. I don't have to tweak a bunch of stuff to make it work. I don't have to install a bunch of extensions that are then going to break when something updates if I don't configure something differently. If I can't just install it for somebody and just leave it alone, and they're going to continue to have a bunch of issues and problems because things are changing constantly, I will go to a different distro for those kinds of use cases. And for me personally, you've kind of got me on board, at least on my personal machine, with Arch, because if only because of the software availability.
And Antigross makes it really easy.
Every program I could ever imagine, I just install it.
Yeah, and you can get up and going super quick again with Antigross, so it's not a huge installation process. Now, here's what I estimate. This has sort of been true for the last few releases. There's nothing groundbreaking and new in Ubuntu that if you're not already convinced, I don't think there's something here that's going to convince you that didn't convince you before. Nothing's really changed at that level. If you are buying into what they're doing now, though, this is reiterating on all of the stuff you like. I mean, it really is a nice, solid iteration. If I had been betting my horse on just a nice, continual, steady evolution of Unity for a few years, I'd be really happy with that payoff right now. That's not the desktop experience I look for, but it is genuinely a nice approach, and I'm actually kind of glad they're doing it this way before they switch over, because it sounds like people like you who like that approach might lose their S for a little bit, and you're going to be happy to have 15.10 to hang out on for a while, or 14.04, whatever you're going to use. I don't.
Yeah, but here's the problem. The very next release we have is an LTS.
I bet they'll leave it around for a while. I bet there's going to be dual logins for quite a while.
Yeah, well, and here's the thing. If I can, as long as I have a way to continue to use LTS and they can take 5 years to suss this out, by all means, go right ahead. I don't want the desktop to stop moving forward. I just want the majority of the changes and the majority of playing around to happen on distros like Arch, and leave my LTS alone because it creates headaches for me.
I think you're going to see a dual login approach. I bet for that LTS, I bet you a Unity 8 my bet is not even default. Unity 8 is going to be available as a login option, but I bet you it's not even the default desktop. And then suckers like me, when we run it, that's what we'll be using, because that's what we got to do.
Listen, I think that's a great compromise.
So the general approach to the Ubuntu desktop does seem to be lending itself pretty much to a worker's workstation OS. A modern worker's workstation OS that you can count on for at least 9 months. And let's be honest, if you're doing a lot of development or something like that, you can walk a line. Sometimes some of us, we hate to reload our machine all the time. And some of us, after 9 months, we gunk it up so bad we don't mind reloading it. But one of the things that got an update in this version of Ubuntu 15.10 is Ubuntu Make, which is a command line utility that makes installing popular developer tools easier on Ubuntu, and it now supports more platforms and frameworks, including the full Android development environment. This is a big deal because it's essentially the pitch to developers is you can get your hipster laptop or go get yourself a nice Intel-powered rig, from another vendor, install this Ubuntu 15.10 thing, and with a couple of commands on the command line, you have an entire web development environment set up, or you have an entire Android development environment set up, which is a major pain in the ass, especially if you are a new user switching to Ubuntu, coming from Windows. You want to try something. This is a huge hurdle. Figuring out how to install Android development tools like the Android Studio and things like that have been a process for people. Even if it's not a major process for some of us, it's been a major process for them. I love that fact that Ubuntu Make is including some of these things. It's just Ubuntu Make command, a couple other commands, and it sets up the whole environment for you. So that's nice. That got an update with this as well. So that combined with GCC 5 and the Python updates, Ubuntu Make seems like a pretty solid desktop for developers as well. So Noah, is there anything else we want to touch on in this review of Ubuntu 15.10?
No, I stand by the kind of what you said earlier. I guess really expanding on what you said earlier is it's kind of designed as a general purpose, ready to go workstation OS. And if you've ever thought about getting into Linux and you're not sure where to start, you're not sure which distro to pick, I think 15.10 it fits that bill of when we recommend people start with Ubuntu, at least I do. Yeah. That I think 15.10 fits right in there, and I think they did a really great job of adding just enough new stuff to keep things current, and at the same time, there is one big thing that changed. Yeah. big thing that changed.
What?
VirtualBox comes with 4. I don't want to say it because I'm going to get it wrong, but my 1404 install had 4.3.10, and that doesn't include guest editions for Windows 10. And so with 15.10, you get the newest version of VirtualBox, and you get guest editions, so you can actually do full screen Windows 10, which might be important.
That could be very. There you go. And you know what else is? I think I have that and a bunch of other gritty details about changes in this release, all busted out in the show notes, as well as links to get Unity 8 installed. Last but not least, we were talking about how it makes a good workstation for people who just want a kind of consistent desktop experience that feels modern, people that are maybe developers and want a workstation, sysops, that kind of stuff. Also, to me, this seems to be the go-to distro to recommend for gaming. I know a lot of people might think it's the LTS or something like that, but I think it's this one, something that has modern hardware support. I think is kind of key. The new kernel does that. There it is. There's the right one. The new kernel has modern hardware support. With 15.10, it's really easy to get the Steam controller working. And in one click, I have the NVIDIA kernel. I have the binary driver for the kernel. It's the driver's version 352.41. So it's NVIDIA kernel driver 352. One checkbox. Really easy for gamers. I also, the Navu driver worked just fine for a while, but for some of the things we need for in-studio capture, I had to load the NVIDIA proprietary driver. And the process is very simple and straightforward. One tip would be, if you have HDMI devices, disconnect them while you're doing the installation. Sometimes the installer just freaks out if you have multiple HDMI devices hooked up. Just saying, I noticed that. All right, Noah, that's the Linux Action Show's look and review at Ubuntu 15.10. And that brings us to the end of this week's broadcast. Before we get out of here, we're going to cover a little bit of feedback. And our first one comes in from TUN. Really, that's what it says. About SSH key management. It says, hello, I recently watched your latest episode on password management, and was wondering if there is any software to manage my private as well as public SSH keys. It would be great if the software could also manage my PGP keys. Thanks, and keep up the good work. Noah, do you have something in your tool bag for this?
I actually, you know what? I have nothing, and I was kind of hoping you would. Basically, I manage all of my keys now on my YubiKey is what I use to secure everything. So I actually don't have any real solution to key management for PGP because I don't have a use for it.
Well, I don't have a really interesting answer, but I do have an answer for you, and it's really it's something that I've picked. I guess the best way to say is this is the one I end up going back to over and over again, and it's just simply GNOME Keyring Manager. And I don't know if I have it installed out here in the studio. I don't think I do, and it's not installed by default on the GNOME desktop, but you can get it installed, and it's really easy and straightforward. And I can't remember exactly the name of it, but it's like keyring or passwords. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, exactly. Passwords and keys. It is installed by default. It's password and keys in the GNOME desktop, and I wanted to have this is my really cool high-tech solution for this, but to be honest with you, Noah, I've never had a reason not to use this. And in fact, every time I've kind of gone away from it, I end up coming back to it because A, it's really easy to get going on any machine that has GNOME, and B, it's straightforward enough that it works for me. Now, of course, you have K-Wallet on the KDE desktop, and you have a bunch of other options. But the other thing that I like about the GNOME Keyring Manager, or I'm sorry, Password and Keys, I think it's called now, is it gets locked and unlocked if I log in at GDM or with my user session with an interactive password or interactive authentication, it automatically unlocks access to part of this for me. If I use automatic login on a machine, it automatically locks this, so it can't be opened by anybody just walking up to the machine. So it's smart about it knows if you have automatic login or not, which is kind of a neat feature. But I bet you there's a whole bunch of different options. linuxactionshow.reddit.com.
Jam O writes in with Collaborative Document Server, and he says Collaborative Documents Hackpad has been acquired by Dropbox and open sourced, and then he gives the link for the GitHub account. Hackpad is based on Etherpad, tried at hackpad.com before installing it on a droplet. Some hot OSM collaborators have recommended it to me. Now, Chris, I know that you are constantly searching for collaborative document editing replacements for Google Docs. I was wondering if you have heard about this and if you've given it any thought as to how practical of a solution it might be.
So I have, and I don't know if I've actually ever tested Hackpad itself, but I would be not very surprised, I guess I should say, to learn that this is probably what's powering Dropbox's latest project called Paper, which is a collaborative editor. And so I'm guessing that they've taken Hackpad and created Paper from it. So they're going to have a commercial offering around this very soon. Hackpad is something that I've looked at. Etherpad, I think, might be somewhat similar to this. I haven't actually tried this one in production yet. I would love to know if it has Markdown support too. Hackpad, oh yeah, it says right there. Sorry, Hackpad is based on Etherpad. Yeah, which Etherpad I have used, and Etherpad is great. So I would have a lot of high hopes for Hackpad as well. And I don't know, you think maybe we should throw it on a droplet and give it a try?
I think it'd be really fun to do a show in something like this and see how it works out. Because the only real way you're really going to know if it's going to work or not is to try it.
Well, there's that. And honestly, if this is what Paper is going to be based on, then I hope that they keep it going, right? Wouldn't that be great? Like the idea would be that if Dropbox deploys this Paper product and they continue to contribute to Hackpad, this could be a great open source project that just continues to get developed on. All right, I wanted to call out a special attention to a couple of threads in our subreddit. Night Ranger in all capitals with caps lock set to extreme mode has posted his thoughts on the Valve Stream Controller from a Linux user. Now, the post isn't in caps, but just the title. It's actually a really great write-up of the controller because he spent some serious time playing different games and the different options for it and getting it set up. It was a very, very, very long post. And if you are seriously considering the controller and want to just nerd out on somebody's opinions as a Linux user, definitely worth a read. And then, this is a personal plug. Dorma Korea, I think is how or Via says he's going off grid with no internet at home. And no, this guy kind of sounds like you. He got in a spat with his ISP. And so he just said, screw it, I'm canceling my service. And now he's like, well, I was going to go across the street and go get a service from the other ISP because they got a good old duopoly in his neck of the woods. But then he thought about it after listening to Tech Talk Today. Oops. And decided maybe I'll try going without internet for a little bit. So he's looking for people's tips for going off the grid with Linux. We've talked about this a little bit before on the show. It's a particular interest of mine too. So I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes.
Yeah, and I think for entertainment, I think you can get a lot of distance offline. The problem for people like you or me is, well, you need the internet to make a living. So that's not really an option. And then for people like me, I also have to have access to the internet to do my job. And no matter how creative I am, no matter how smart I am, or no matter how much money I spend, I will never, I don't think, be able to invent a solution that allows me to be off the grid and connected at the same time. So
I'm going to make it happen, Noah.
I'm
going to make it happen.
Okay, all right.
I'm going to make it happen one MiFi device and battery drain down at a time. Boom, it's going to happen, Noah. You
but
doubt.
then you're connected, though.
Yeah, well, that is true. But, well, connected for periods of time. I don't know, Noah.
Okay.
That would
work.
I talked about in the episode of Tech Talk Today that he's referring to, I talked about a Debian developer who lives off the grid but then dials up from time to time and uses like RSS to email and a bunch of other tools to essentially live the offline life. So that's where the topic came up from. And also, I'll give a plug. I guess I'll give another plug for Tech Talk Today. I recorded an episode today with Benjamin, and he is the developer, one of the people behind the Glucosio app, an open source diabetes testing app that is anonymously crowdsourcing the data that gets generated to help researchers do large data collection. So Benjamin Crincia joined me on Tech Talk Today to talk about his new project and the open source foundation around it and structure of that. And it's a pretty cool effort. I was on episode 220 of Tech Talk Today. Noah, is there anything you want to plug before we get out of here today?
Follow me on Twitter at Colonel Linux, and you're at Chris LAS.
Thank you, sir. That's right.
I want to say a huge thank you to everyone that wrote into the show this week by going to jupiterbroadcasting.com, clicking the contact link, and choosing the Linux Action Show from the drop-down menu. I asked people to keep those emails brief and to the point, and man, you guys, I actually got to read most of the emails this week. I make it a point to at least look at every piece of email that ever comes into the show, but to read in-depth start to finish, some weeks I just don't have time to do it. And this week, almost all the email that came in was, at 10 lines at best. And it was super appreciated.
Nice and concise.
So thank you very, very much. Really good quality content and very concise and very brief.
Nice. Unlike us, linuxactionshow.reddit.com. Go over there to submit stories, projects, and also a great place to leave a very non-brief piece of feedback if you just want the community to read it. So if you do want to write something long, that is a great spot to do that because that's where people go to sometimes sit back and do some long reading. linuxactionshow.reddit.com, projects, open source applications, news stories, your votes, your comments, all of that are very much appreciated. jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar is where you go to find the live times of the show. We do it on Fridays, 3 p.m. Pacific, but the calendar will automatically convert that for you, and we do it at jblive.tv. Okay, everybody. Well, thank you so much for tuning this week's episode of the Linux Action Show, and we'll see you right back here next week. Oh man.
No,
I know.
stop,
I'm
stop.
sorry.
I
I don't know why it's happening. I don't know why it's happening.
All right. Stop quickly.
It happened when I started cooking something that smells like something I cook around the holidays. And now
Stop cooking. Stop eating if you need to, but
I know,
stop
dude.
singing Christmas songs.
I know, dude. I'm sorry.